Warning, I swear a lot.
It is 3:05 in the PM, and you are watching The Foreman. I'm your host, Foreman, and it's been a couple weeks since we've done one of these, actually. Things got busy, I've had a lot going on, and then there would be like random little setbacks, which would mean I wouldn't be able to put up a video or something, or I'd be busy, or what have you. It's been a weird couple weeks, which is interesting, because I repeatedly said when March starts, I'm going to be focusing on shit like crazy, and then like video making, I mean, and then everything sort of got in the way. But hey, we're on track now, I think. Hopefully when this goes up, I'll have started once again a streak of daily uploads, and that'll be nice. But while it is important to maintain daily uploads, I think it shouldn't necessarily be done to the detriment of everything else in your life. Sometimes you need to see people, sometimes you need to help people, sometimes you need to do stuff for yourself, sometimes you need to do stuff for other people. It's just the way that it is. But that's not the topic of conversation for today. Today's topic is a bizarre one, mainly because it's not in any way relevant to anything at the moment, and because it's a weird comparison. It's bizarre, I don't know, but it's a thought I had. It's a thought I had earlier, like yesterday, and it's something I wanted to discuss. And specifically, I wanted to discuss Middle-earth, I guess more specifically Shadow of War, but you know, the Middle-earth games, Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War, and The Force Unleashed. Now, I haven't played Force Unleashed 2, and I haven't played Shadow of Mordor, so for all intents and purposes, I'm going to be talking about Shadow of War and The Force Unleashed. I'm not really going to be comparing the two, and I'm not going to be talking about many of their similarities either, because there aren't that many. But there is one crucial point in which they are similar, and that's kind of what I wanted to discuss. Neither of them are canon. I think The Force Unleashed was at some point, but it isn't anymore. And Middle-earth, I think you could make the timing work on Middle-earth's story. I think you could fit that into the overall story of Lord of the Rings. Like, you take the movie into consideration, taking place after the events of Shadow of War and the destruction of the ring leading to the end of Shadow of War's story. But for all intents and purposes, I believe it's quite difficult to make the time fit. Some of the changes to the characters are pretty weird, and for all intents and purposes, it's not canon. But there's something about these two games that I appreciate in terms of their sort of non-canonicity / supporting role in terms of their respective universes. Like, neither of them are center stage in terms of their respective franchises. Many people don't know who Starkiller is, and many people don't know who Talion is. But most people know who Frodo is, and most people know who Luke Skywalker is, right? It makes sense. But I find interesting their role, as it were, in sort of providing more context to the universes of the games in question. Like, yeah, the games technically aren't canon, and by extension you should really rule out everything in those games as being non-canon, but I think the display, more specifically, of characters' abilities and the manipulations of the magical and supernatural forces within those respective universes, A, I don't see any reason why those shouldn't be canon, and B, I think, once again, they provide an interesting perspective on what can be accomplished with those things in those universes. We'll start with The Force Unleashed. Starkiller is ridiculous. Starkiller is fucking ridiculous. He is absurd. He has to be non-canon, I think, because he is absurd. He's ridiculously powerful. To the point where, and I'm going to be dropping spoilers for The Force Unleashed and Shadow of War throughout this video, so if you don't want to know spoilers about either of them, here's your warning. Not going to go through it again. But by the end of Force Unleashed 1's true ending, if you do it like the light way as opposed to the dark way, that's the true ending, Starkiller goes head-to-head with Palpatine, straight up, and matches him, and technically beats him as well. As in, Palpatine does his full fucking Force Lightning, unlimited power bullshit, and Starkiller stands there and takes it, and blocks it, and starts pushing him back. Now, I'm not overly versed on all the individual power levels of different Force users throughout the Star Wars universe. Personally, I'm more focused on like lightsaber skill, because I find that a lot more interesting with all of the stances and stuff, and there's plenty there with Starkiller as well. But in terms of Force power, I'm pretty sure that Sidious is one of the strongest ever. Obviously, there probably has been some stronger, like the Old Republic, for example, that has a wide array of extremely powerful Force users. But in terms of the the Skywalker saga, as it were, that time period, Sidious is pretty much top dog, isn't he? Pretty much kind of top dog, and Starkiller matches him. Now, there's been a lot of debate as to whether Starkiller is actually stronger or weaker than the Emperor, and I'm on the side of him being weaker. I do not think he's more powerful than the Emperor. I think he sort of manages to overcome him. He sort of manages to catch him off guard, kind of manages to outmaneuver him a bit, because Starkiller has a lot of skill, not just in the Force. He's a very good lightsaber duelist, for instance, and he has an absurd amount of combat experience by the time that game comes to a close, because he has a body count roughly on par with multiple natural disasters and WMD. So I don't think he's stronger than Palpatine, but he still stood up to him, something that not even Luke or Vader could realistically do, which is impressive. And I find it fascinating to be able to be provided. Both games provide you with the context of, okay, here is the power, as it were, in this universe. In Lord of the Rings, rings of power are kind of your main deal. Like, there is magic outside of the rings of power, but rings of power are the main MacGuffins, as it were, or at the very least, Shadow of War really pushes that narrative hard, where it's like, rings are everything, rings are the most important thing, which I feel is kind of missing the point of Lord of the Rings as a whole, but it doesn't matter. That's what they went with. That was their choice. And then, of course, in Star Wars, it's all about Force users and being able to wield the Force. Force users are the most powerful, even though I personally love to see stories of characters who don't use the Force, like I loved Rogue One. Nevertheless, Force users are kind of the movers and shakers in the Star Wars universe, and being able to see Starkiller is fascinating in terms of his use of the Force, purely because he's so shit at it. And that might seem strange to any of you who have played that game, because Starkiller can wield the Force like a fucking nuke. He can massacre hundreds of people very quickly just by using the Force. But Starkiller was trained to be a weapon. Dude's an assassin. That's his whole thing. That is entirely what he was built for. He was literally built for it in the second game, but in the first game he was taken as a child and turned into a weapon, and he is a weapon. But he has little to no understanding of the nuances of the Force. He does not understand any application of the Force that does not involve, well, Force, right? He couldn't. I don't think he knows Force breathing, like, being able to survive in atmospheres with no oxygen. He probably can't heal himself. He can't talk to animals, I'm pretty sure. I don't know. There might be examples of where he actually could, but if he can, it's rudimentary. Like, he hasn't mastered any of these skills at all. I don't think his Force senses are particularly good. I think he gets ambushed once or twice during the Force Unleashed, in moments where a good Jedi, as it were, a good Force user would be able to figure it out. Battle precognition, I think it's called. He doesn't really have much of that. He doesn't even know when Vader literally stabs him in the back with a lightsaber. Like, he had no idea that was about to happen. Now, granted, maybe that's because he wasn't expecting it. But, like, Force users can skim the surface thoughts of nearby people, even other Force users, to an extent. Then again, Vader is an exceptionally powerful Force user and probably could conceal that, so I guess I could give Starkiller the benefit of the doubt there. But my point, really, when you really get down to it, Starkiller has no proficiency or real knowledge in any Force power that doesn't involve killing people. He's very good at Force lightning. His ability to use the Force to push things and lift things is insane. He literally pulls an Imperial Star Destroyer out of space. He just rips it out of space and plummets it into the ground. That's exceptionally powerful, very impressive. But he doesn't understand the nuances. He doesn't understand the more precise applications of the Force. Force assassins are a thing. Sith assassins are a thing, and they can cloak themselves with the Force. Pretty sure Starkiller can't do that. Or at the very least, when I give all these examples, I'm not talking about Force Unleashed 2. I'm talking about Force Unleashed 1, which was literally Starkiller. Force Unleashed 2 was a clone. So I feel like that's enough to maybe differentiate between the two. They are technically two different characters. So I find Starkiller's aptitude with the Force fascinating in its limitedness, because it is, and it's fun. Like, let's not pretend it isn't fun. He is a wrecking ball. And that's enjoyable, that's fun gameplay. I'm not going to sit here and tell you guys that Force Unleashed was an incredible video game. It was alright, it was pretty good, I guess. And I didn't play the, what was it, the Jedi Academy games and stuff like that, those old games, which were like, if you want to play as a Jedi, you play these games, because this is what it's like to be a Jedi in a video game. This is the closest you're going to get for the foreseeable future. And I also haven't played Fallen Order, so I don't know what that's like. But, playing as Starkiller was my first proper experience in just playing as a Jedi. The closest thing I got was the Revenge of the Sith game on the PS2, which I really liked. That is a good game. It is fun. But once again, not quite the same. But it's fascinating to compare The Force Unleashed to, say, Knights of the Old Republic and Knights of the Old Republic 2, where there is a lot of philosophical talk about the different applications and uses and manipulations of the Force and how it can be used and what it can do and what can happen to the Force, even if you do certain things, striking at specific points in the universe to do specific things, committing atrocities in certain places in like tandem with others to create wounds in the Force. Like, there's a whole thing there. And then you go back to the Force Unleashed and it's just the Force is a big magic hammer that you hit people with and you can shoot electric out of your hands, and that's fun. And I don't begrudge the Force Unleashed that, because it never tries to be anything more than that. It's not sitting here trying to tell you that Starkiller's a Jedi Master and he sees all the threads of the Force. He's a wrecking ball. I said it before, I'll say it again. That's what he is. That's all he is. That's all he was trained to be. And the game is about him using those skills to get to make his own decision. He fights his way through and then finally gets to do something that was his choice and go out on his own terms, which is respectable. And I like Starkiller. He's not the most in-depth character of all time, but I quite like him. I think he's cool. Cool and, he's, you know, he's not awesome, he's not rad, he's not brilliant, he's just kind of cool. That's kind of it. But oh, and if you guys have ever played the DLC for The Force Unleashed, by the way, which explores the dark side ending, it gets quite interesting, actually, because the dark side ending DLCs are basically what-if scenarios. So, say, in episode 4, tracking down Luke on Tatooine, instead of Vader, who doesn't want to go to Tatooine, the Emperor sends Starkiller, who has no qualms about going to Tatooine, and Starkiller proceeds to go down there and fuck the entire place up hard, murders Ben. I can't remember if he manages to get Luke. Can't remember, but he kills Ben. So, you know, he's already killed Ben Kenobi. I think he fights Boba Fett. I can't remember. They go all out to make that ridiculous. Like, they don't fuck around. They don't try and make it make too much sense. They're just like, let's put Starkiller in his dark side form against all of your favorite characters and just have it be dream matches, basically. Which, once again, I respect them not trying to be too clever about it. And they're like, let's just go for it. And then the second, oh, fuck. I hit my keyboard. Oh god, I pulled my cable. Oh, it's all going wrong. And the second one, and once again, like, I am still dropping spoilers. There's all spoilers here. In the second one, in the second DLC for The Force Unleashed, I'm pretty sure you destroy the Millennium Falcon, you kill Han and Leia, and you turn Luke to the dark side. And it's this fascinating little preview into, like, wow, if Starkiller had gone to the dark side and was canon, more to the point, the Emperor would have won. Because, and like, I'm not sure how fair that is, because Vader is really strong. Like, the films and Force Unleashed don't do Vader justice. I haven't seen much of it, but I think Fallen Order does Vader justice, because Vader is strong, very strong. And the comics, from what I can tell, from what little I've seen, definitely do him justice, because they paint him as this horrific figure that he actually is. It's very cool. But like I said at the start of this episode, I guess, I appreciate being provided with the context of a character who is obscenely overpowered. You know, we have these concepts in our universe of magic and whatever. Let's have a character who can really fucking go wild with it. Let's see what the destructive capabilities of these powers are. And perhaps it's not the most in-depth or interesting or nuanced thing in the world, but it is interesting, and I appreciate being given that context. But that's The Force Unleashed. I want to move on to Shadow of War, which I've been playing a lot more recently, and probably have a little more concrete things to say about, but I don't know, we'll see. I don't script these, so fuck. But Talion is fascinating. And that's strange because he's quite a bland character, much like Starkiller. This is kind of why I'm making the comparison, because they're two very similar characters in the sense that they are rather bland characters who command an overwhelming amount of power. Like, I like Talion, I do. I actually really like Talion as a character because he's nothing more than he needs to be. They don't try to make him too complicated. He's just a dude he lost his family and he's trying to defend his country and he's making bad decisions to defend his country. That's it. That's all Talion is. And the ending, which I think they added in much later or something, I don't know the details behind that. I started playing after this had already been done. But the ending in which his duty is fulfilled, as it were, and he can go be with his wife and child again. Perfect. That is a perfect ending, especially considering how long Shadow of War is. You're gonna grow attached to Talion. If you enjoy the game, you will in some small way, grow attached to Talion. You have to. You spend that much fucking time with the guy. It's almost mandatory. And if you don't, that's unfortunate. You probably won't enjoy it as much, but you go through all this, you've seen him die over and over and over again, and his deaths are canon, incidentally, because that's kind of a big mechanic behind the game. He is the Grave Walker. He can die, he just always comes back. And you just see this happening to him over and over and over again, and he's fighting Uruks, so these aren't quick, clean deaths either. They're quite rough. And then, to top it all off, he's fighting, once again, spoilers, to top it all off, he's actually dominated by the Nazgul and becomes a Nazgul and completely loses his free will and just becomes one of the 9. And then once the ring's been destroyed by Frodo and Sam, he's finally set free and he can finally be with his family. And like, while you're doing the end game content of the game, which is simply hold off, defend, fight Mordor for as long as you can before eventually being overwhelmed. I think you do a certain amount of defense missions and then you can go to a certain point to end the game whenever you like. But the point is, it's not, and this, it kind of helps that the game's not canon actually, because you can now completely play with this as much as you like. It is not clearly defined how long Talion fights for at the end of Shadow of War. There is no, like, a lot of Lord of the Rings content does make a point to say this is in the Third Age, the end of the thingamajiggy. They do at least make some point to tell you this specific time frame, maybe even this close to the events of the books and or movies. But Shadow of War is a lot more vague, which means it is distinctly unclear how long Talion has been fighting for. Now, there is a limit. It couldn't have been like hundreds of years. That'd be a bit much. But on one of the many occasions in which you die, Talion will remark that he can't remember how long he's been doing this for. It could be days, it could be weeks, it could be months, years, decades. He literally could be doing it for that long, where he has been doing nothing but fighting Mordor with his own army. He's just been defending Cirith Ungol and Minas Morgul and Nirn and Saragost and Gorgoroth. He's just been spending decades potentially holding this all together whilst fighting off the corrupting influence of the Nazgul before it finally claims him. And I find it really hard to not be attached to a character after all that, especially like I said, when he finally gets to have peace, which I think is the perfect ending to that game. Couldn't ask for more. People were upset when it turned out that he was dead, but I was like, literally, there's nothing better for the guy. We've been through 2 games spanning an ungodly amount of time, and the only thing he's ever wanted was A, to defend Gondor, and B, to see his family again. Not necessarily in that order, but probably in that order. And by the end of it, he gets both. That's wonderful. And that song at the end of the game is so good. But I have definitely wandered off topic here. I just really love that game. I really love the ending. I wanted to talk more about the powers involved, as it were. Because, like I said before, Shadow of Mordor, Shadow of War, those 2 games, definitely focus more on the rings in Lord of the Rings, which, once again, is not really the point of that franchise, despite how it may sound. The One Ring, yes, that is a big focus, but it's not really what it's about. It's about, I don't know, it's hard to explain. It's about the littlest of us making the biggest contributions. It's about people standing together against certain failure. and doom. It's about how even the biggest and strongest of us have flaws and failings that cannot be overcome simply by being the biggest and the strongest. It is about the rings, but it's not just about the rings. And Shadow War is kind of just about the rings, because the plot of Shadow War is that they make a new ring, a nice ring, a better ring. It's way better than Sauron's ring, because this one's blue, so it's way better and way gooder and way nicer. And it's essentially you versus Sauron. You can use the ring to dominate his forces, dominate his orcs, and you fight a war with him, and it's a lot of fun. I love doing it, but it's fascinating to go through Talion's skill tree and see all of the ridiculous shit he can pull off. Now, granted, he has the wraith of an old elven smith in his head, as well as this bright ring, so he has access to a variety of powers. But even taking that into consideration, some of the stuff that Talion can do is absurd. It gets ridiculous. It gets stupid. In fact, it makes Gandalf look meager in comparison, and that's not really accurate. I don't think either Celebrimbor or Talion would be stronger than Gandalf, and combining them together I don't think makes them stronger than Gandalf. Getting the ring? Sure, because that's a whole thing, but it's ridiculous, and I think it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be ridiculous. You are being given the opportunity to play as a ridiculously overpowered character in this universe, which is something I enjoy, but among the many things that Talion can do, he can teleport to someone and kill them. He can cause flames, just like you got a little, you set up a little campfire. He can just make that explode. You shoot an arrow into it, it'll explode. Fuck it, he can poison things from a distance. I did mention the teleporting. He can run at like Mach 5 and sprint all over the place. He can send a wraith version of himself forward to stab you while he just sits there and watches, because he doesn't have to do it. So he can astral project assassinate you. He can summon wildlife. He can summon Caragors, which are basically wargs, for those of you who aren't familiar. They aren't exactly wargs, but for all intents and purposes they are. He can summon drakes. He can summon grogs, so big stone giants, little bitch dragons, not real dragons, little bitch dragons. He can just summon them, and he's got one. And he's got one. He's just got one. He has an almost absurdly, I would almost say preternatural level of awareness of his surroundings, where he can counter anything that comes at him, and he can summon that wraith thing to counter alongside him countering. So if two people attack him at the same time, he's fine. He's got it covered. Not fussed. Doesn't even matter. When he gets the ring, he can mind control shit, which is exceptionally powerful, and apparently he can do this on a very large scale as well. He can mass dominate, which is absurd. He's athletic, and he can slow down time mid-air to shoot arrows. He can harness Elven Rage to literally turn himself into like 7 dudes who attack ridiculously fast in slow motion. Can literally murder an entire army doing that, by the way. He can, that thing that Gandalf does where he bams his staff on the floor and it's a big shockwave? Well, Talion can do that too. And he can also make it do fire or poison or whatever. He can shoot an arrow that'll explode. The reason I bring all this up, ladies and gentlemen, is to not make you all think like, oh, Talion's the coolest. Oh, he's so cool because he's got all of these moves. It's because this is all ridiculous. It's all absurd, and it's fascinating to be able to do it in the context of Middle-earth, as it were. Being able to play as a character who's insane. I haven't even touched on what you can do once you become corrupted by the Nazgul. Talion doesn't get weaker. I should point, spoilers. I did say it at the start, and I said I would say it again, but I am saying it again. Spoilers, so many. Talion loses the bright ring. He loses the new ring. He loses it. And he loses Celebrimbor as well. He doesn't get Celebrimbor anymore. Instead, he takes Isildur's ring and puts it on. Because without Celebrimbor, Talion's literally dying. Because when his wife and child were killed, he was also mortally wounded. And it was only Celebrimbor's intervention that allowed him to stay alive. He puts on the ring of Isildur, which basically means that eventually Talion's going to take Isildur's place amongst the Nazgul. And that's going to be it. But I wouldn't say that Isildur's ring was as powerful as the Bright Ring, or the New Ring, or the One Ring, or any of them. But once Talion puts that fucking thing on, he gets even stronger. He can raise the dead now. He can raise the dead. He can teleport. He gains access through certain equipment to abilities that basically allow him to tell most things to fuck off. And he does. And it's just interesting to think that while Aragorn and his friends and his fellowship were traveling across the world to try and get Frodo to Mount Doom, and then eventually made their stand at the Black Gate to hold off Sauron's forces for as long as possible, this superhuman demigod was literally on the other side of the fucking Ithilien forest, on the other side of that mountain range around Cirith Ungol and Minas Morgul, fighting a war for an unspecified amount of time and absolutely stomping his way through Mordor. Like, you kill so many Uruks by the end of that game. Even if you don't go out of your way to do it, even if you focus more on captains and achieving objectives, rather than just fighting grunts or whatever, you kill so many Uruks. And I like this. I like all this, because it is fun. It is all fun. But as I've discussed previously on this subject, it's fascinating to have a situation where you are so ridiculously overpowered. Talion is so absurdly overpowered. He is ridiculous. He is every Lord of the Rings OC do not steal that anyone has ever made, I imagine, who somehow made, and the people who are writing their own OC characters who have somehow like, oh, my character, not only is he's basically like an elf, but he's also got a ring of power, and he's also a Nazgul. It's ridiculous, and you just get to play as that, which there is appeal there, there is fun there, of course there is, but it's fascinating that you play such an overpowered character and you lose. You don't win. You don't win. You can't win. It's impossible to win because there's only one thing more OP than Talion, and that's Sauron. And I guess the Witch King. The Witch King is technically stronger than Talion at any given point. But then again, Talion has a lot of abilities that the Witch King does not have. Talion's kind of like if you put Sauron and the Witch King together. Like Sauron, after he's become disembodied and doesn't have his physical being anymore and a lot of that brute physical power, he's just got a lot of the manipulation and the domination and stuff like that. And then the Witch King of Angmar, of course, being an absolute powerhouse. You just fuse those together, you get Talion, I suppose. But yeah, I think that's the most mind-blowing thing to me. I can set up my Talion in my games to be such a demigod. And I can do so much, and I can conquer all those fortresses, and I can take down captains. But I'm still not winning. I still haven't won the war, and I still never can win the war, because Sauron is just so much more powerful. And also, despite the fact that Talion is so overpowered, he's still a dude, which means he gets hit like I play on brutal, so that's why I'm saying this. Gets hit like 3 times, he dies. He just drops and dies. That's it. He's still a dude. All those magic powers don't make him magically invulnerable. He's very fragile, in fact, because he's just a dude. He just has a lot of means by which to avoid dying, but fucking Shelob's a weird one in that game. I don't understand I don't hate the character of Shelob in that game. I think she's presented quite interestingly to be this kind of character and what she is and all that. But I think she shouldn't be Shelob. I think she shouldn't be Shelob because the problem with Middle-earth in that respect is that it makes no fucking sense that Sam was able to body Shelob so hard. Because literally, at the end of Act 1 going into Act 2, you see Shelob take down a Nazgul. Now, she can't kill it, because she lacks the ability to permanently remove a Nazgul, because it's not so simple as just killing them. Even Aragorn couldn't. But she, spears one through the chest with her foreleg and fucking throws it across the room. For all intents and purposes, she overpowered that thing and killed it. That's a Nazgul. Then they don't fuck around. I appreciate Shadow of War so much because yes, Talion is so OC Superman powerful that he can fight all the Nazgul at the same time, but the game does make a point of being like, the Nazgul are serious business and don't fuck around. Like, they do make a good point of showing you just how powerful they are. So Shelob can take down a Nazgul, and a Sam can take down a Shelob. Now, I know, it's not like Sam actually beat Shelob in that respect. He got lucky, and he had the Light of Galadriel, which helps. But my point that makes that weird, I appreciate I've strayed way off topic, but I don't care, I just love talking about this shit, is that Shelob is the spider. That is her identity. Even in Middle-earth, Shadow of War, she is the spider. She can turn into her spider form. She is the spider. She is referred to as the spider. having her be essentially the same entity that she is in Shadow of War as she is in Return of the King just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Because the reason I feel that Sam was able to win against Shelob, and this is obviously because Shadow of War Shelob didn't exist yet, and that wasn't a thing, is because Shelob was a giant spider. She was smart in that animal cunning, insect cunning kind of way, not a sentient being. Sam could not be a giant spider that was also a sentient being. He could not. Because she would outsmart him, because she is like centuries old. So what I think they should have done is that Shelob in Shadow of War shouldn't have been a spider. Straight up. I think she should have been, like, towards the end of the game perhaps, or something, she should have been cursed to be a spider, or something happened in which she could only ever be in her spider form, and by staying in that form for so long, her mind erodes away and she becomes the spider, rather than what they did, which means, like, that is the issue of Shadow of War. Like, stuff that happens in there then makes later games make no sense. But I love the game so much, and I like Shelob in that game, legit. I like how powerful she is as well. Like, it's cool. I wish they didn't make her a, you know, what she is, because it's clearly like, ooh, look, she's pretty. And I'm like, she shouldn't be pretty, she's the spider. Why would she be pretty? I guess there's no reason for her not to be, but there's no reason for her to be pretty. It makes no sense. It makes no sense that she's a woman. I'd rather have just gone in there and talked to a talking spider. And have it be implied that the spider that you're talking to, Shelob, she is the spider, you're talking to the spider, and she's losing her fucking mind. So that by the time Sam and Frodo get there, she's long gone. She's an animal now, that's it. She's just a predator, nothing more. It just feels like, I don't know. It doesn't matter, it's not canon, and they did their own thing with the setting, which I can respect. I've wandered so far off topic, but I love, I guess, that actually kind of brings me back nicely to the topic. I love the perspective that these games provide on their respective worlds, even if they aren't specifically canon, because even though it isn't specifically canon, and you can't use in any canon argument like, oh, well, this could be this because Talion's bright ring. No, because that ring's not canon. But it's interesting to see the world from the perspective of these non-canon things being introduced and see the world react to it. Urlux in Shadow of War are not canon. That's not what Mordor's army is. Mordor's army are orcs and Urlux, Uruk-hai, and Urlux in Lord of the Rings are not the same as Urlux in Shadow of War. They're very different. And Ologs, which I think are supposed to be trolls, but they're not the same either. They made necessary changes, though, to make sure that Shadow of War was enjoyable, because the best thing about Shadow of War is the fucking Urlux and Ologs, and they had to give them a degree of intelligence and personalities to make them enjoyable. So it's not a bad thing that they did that, but it's definitely not canon. But being able to see the world from this perspective is fascinating. And sort of playing the role as someone desperately attempting to keep Mordor in Mordor and prevent the events of Lord of the Rings from taking place, prevent the siege of Minas Tirith and all that, is fun and interesting. I don't know, I really like it. I really, really like it, and I really hope they make a fucking sequel. However, if they do make a sequel, they cannot bring Talion back. Do not bring Talion back. It would ruin... I'm gonna sound like such a hyperbolic, whiny fanboy here, but it would literally fucking ruin the story of the first two games and the ending of Shadow of War if Talion came back. He's gotta stay dead. He has to. He literally has to. His story is done. There's nothing more with Talion. He's out. Why don't we go north? Right? Not many Lord of the Rings games cover Dale and Gundabad, right? Why don't we go there? Check out the Bearsenlings and the Wood Elves. Or have a look around there. Like, yeah, sure, the Hobbit films, I get it, but you can work around that. I'm sure they worked around the actual fucking story itself, and then it was made non-canon, so why not just make another non-canon game? Fucking go for it. Sky's the limit. Let's go to Harad. Why not? Go see what's going on in Pelaga or Lossanac or fucking... I don't know. just go for it. Go nuts. Fuck it. Why not? That's the point of the series. Just fucking go for it. We made another ring. We made 5 rings and put them all on at the same time. And now I can literally pick up or thank and move it somewhere else by thinking about it. Put Saruman in there. Have him do some weird shit. He was involved in the first game and very, very minorly referenced in the second game through certain Uruk captains. That's fun. Do that. Just do shit with it. Fuck it. Have some fun. That is the point of these 2 games, I feel. Is to just take the established settings of these games and run with it. Now, I don't think Force Unleashed did it as well as Shadow of War did, and I'm not even entirely sure Shadow of War did it on purpose. But they did do it, and it was fun, and I did personally enjoy it. I don't think everyone did. In fact, I don't think that many people did. But I love it. Now, I want to see more of it. I want to see more ridiculous, non-canon scenarios, as it were, where we just sort of see how things could be if certain things were the case. You know, what if scenarios, literally just what if scenarios. What if a second ring was made? What if Darth Vader had an apprentice? Let's see. Makes for some interesting shit. But I'm rambling. I think it's time for the end for the day. I think I've talked all I want to talk about, and most of the time I spent talking was not actually the things I wanted to talk about. It was just talking about the games in relation to the things I wanted to talk about because I like the games. I'm definitely more attached to Shadow of War than I am The Force Unleashed. I think The Force Unleashed kind of sucks, but I like The Force Unleashed. A game can suck and I'll still like it. I don't mind if a game sucks as long as it's enjoyable to play, and I did find Force Unleashed enjoyable to play, and I find Shadow of War very enjoyable to play. But what do you think of these games? What do you think of what I've said? Because this was a weird, inane, psychopathic rant, so I'd be curious to see what people think about it. And also, do you have any games in which you have get a similar feeling from? I can't think of any other games like what I've just described right now, but there's got to be other games out there which provide these like absurd what-if scenarios and sort of take a concept and kind of go crazy to it, both go crazy with it, both to the game and the series' benefit and detriment. So if you've got any you can think of, then let me know. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching, or listening, I suppose. I don't know what I'll do next time, but that's been the case every single time, to the point where I don't know why I say it anymore. But I would like to say, hopefully with confidence, that Foreman Talks should be back now. I should be doing it regularly. I'm sure we're going to have plenty to talk about. I'd love to talk about Elden Ring in depth at some point, but I should probably play that a bit more. In fact, I'd almost say I should probably beat Elden Ring before I talk about it at length, because then I'll fully understand. But whatever I talk about next time, I hope I see you there. Toodles. Goodbye.